Done. I got some money back. I'm done.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Muscatine County Board of Supervisors meeting on Monday, April 22nd, 2019. I'd like to call the meeting to order. The first item of business, in fact, is to review the agenda.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Jeff has moved, Santos has seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We'll now move on to item number 3, receiving comments from the public. I don't see any members of the public here, so we'll move on to number 4. Discussion and possible action to approve claims dated April 22nd, 2019 in the amount of $626,871.37.
Move to approve.
Second.
It has been moved by Jeff, seconded by Scott. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Item number 5 is quarterly update on the Eastern Iowa Mental Health and Disability Services region with our region CEO, Lori Elam. Good morning, Lori.
Good morning. I'm moving a little slow today. I did a lot of yard work over the weekend, so beautiful weather and taking advantage of it. So just wanted to give you a quick update. Don't want to take up too much of your time. The region is again impacted by some legislation that finally made it through the House and Senate. The Senate File 504, if you remember, back in 2017, created a 25 or a 20% fund balance carry forward, and we had 2 years to spend fund balance down, which, you know, we've all talked about this many times, seems a little ridiculous. But the legislature fixed that after they saw what happened in the legislative interim committee meetings back in October and December of last year. So House File 691 was passed out of the House over a month ago, and it passed out of the Senate last week. It's on its way to the governor's desk for signature. What it does is it allows the regions to have a 40% fund balance carry forward, and it gives us until 2023 to spend those dollars down. So what does that mean for our region? Well, so far in FY19, we have spent $9.3 million. We started with a fund balance of a little over $12 million. So we are spending at a higher rate than we were in 18 and in 17. But if you remember, we're expanding the crisis services, putting more people in the care coordinator positions and ACQ and the screening folks. We also did the $1.3 million of one-time funding grants for several of our providers in the 5 counties. So when we look at, and this is just a projection, we're anticipating our expenditures total at the end of 19 to be about 11.5. And if you remember, we have 4.1 million of revenue in 19 because we had the 4 counties levy 0, Scott County levied 2384. So we're going to end FY19 with approximately 41% fund balance. So we're pretty darn close to that 40% mark, which was good. Now, keep in mind, all 5 counties and the region have to be at 40%. So at our board meeting last Monday, we talked in general terms, and this is before we knew the bill had passed out of the House. It hadn't moved yet. We talked with the smaller counties, both Cedar and Jackson, about recertifying their budgets if House File 691 passes and lowering their levy, again, trying to smooth all 5 counties out and make it consistent 40% across the board and the region be at 40%. We still have 2 more years to work on that, but it would be nice if we could get to that level early on and then not have to worry about it. So we are going to have an emergency board meeting most likely on Friday afternoon, and I spoke with Supervisor Mather and he's able to participate as well. It'll be the 5 counties having discussions. We will have a spreadsheet that will show if those 2 counties were levied at 75% or 50% or even 25%, or zero what that does for their fund balance. But the issue is the revenue coming in, you know, we lower the revenue, we're gonna spend the regional fund balance at a faster pace. It all gets back to the 3078 does not work for our region. And we have told our legislators time and time again, 3078 doesn't work. We've had lots of discussion with legislators. Some of them continue to say, we're not going to address the levy caps this year, although now we're hearing from the Senate side that they're working on some language to fix the levy cap, remove it, lower the levies for all counties across the state, which would be a property tax savings, but then use backfill money that's supposed to be residential and commercial backfill, which becomes a problem, again, for another portion of the county budgets. So we have some folks kind of up in arms. You can't be taking money from Peter to pay Paul. It just doesn't work. So I know that there's language out there, not sure where they would put that language. It could end up in standings bill, so we need to watch that one. That's usually the last bill coming out, and we need to watch that one closely so something doesn't get put in. It could also go to a conference committee behind closed doors, some wheeling and dealing that takes place in Des Moines, and we're not gonna know about it till the very end. So we are watching. Again, I'm not hearing they're gonna fix levy caps from the House side, and that's pretty much our leadership, you know, moving forward is from the House. So we'll see what happens. I think we are gonna be stuck with the 3078 for at least one more budget cycle, but that may result in having to do some planned reductions, or we go to the legislature and say, here's what's happening, we don't have enough money, 40% fund balance doesn't matter, we've spent our fund balance, and then they keep putting more and more services on our plate, you know, that unfunded mandate. If you remember when I talked about House File 2456, that required the access centers, the intensive residential service homes, and the ACT teams. We already have an ACT team that's expanding to all 5 counties, so that one is not a big deal, but the other 2 services are very costly and expensive, and I continue to tell DHS and the legislature that our region is not gonna move forward in implementing those services until they fix the levy cap. They really can't do anything to us. It's not state money, it's property tax money, it's our money as a region, counties. So I think we need to make sure we draw that line in the sand and say, we're not moving forward till you fix it. And so we'll see what happens with that. I have said that numerous times in meetings with DHS bureau chief. They're listening to me, so.
Well, he was there.
Yes,
Let's not get carried away with what he might have been doing.
right. May not have been listening.
What I continue to find comical in all of this is if you go wind the clock back to the start of regionalization, they talked about a statewide 55 per thousand, per capita, and we're significantly south of that. We're at 3078 now, and I think when Johansson was still here, you guys were talking 36 felt like about the right number, right, Lori? Is that-
Yeah.
We're
Yep.
still thinking somewhere in that range.
It's probably gonna be closer to 40, 42.
Yeah, that was several years ago,
Right,
so.
right, as we've added services, yeah.
Again, back when it started, it was 55, and, now we're saying 5 years later, 6 years later, maybe 50 or 40.
Right,
It's still a significant improvement.
yep.
And I just don't understand why they continue. I worry about this and the other moves, and I don't know if we know how that other bill that's going through, works with this, where they're talking about capping the supervisor's ability to manage their own levies, based on just like a CPI or some kind of an inflation index, period, and eliminating all levy caps. I think that's a disaster waiting to happen.
Is that House Study Bill 165? Yeah,
It's
and
a study
it's-
bill right now.
Yeah, and 2% cap
Yeah,
on
they got
your
rid of
levies?
the inflation thing, I think just went to straight percentages.
Yeah,
Right.
which is.
Yeah, it's absurd. You know, how are you gonna pay for, you know, things that occur in your county, you know, unexpected if you can't raise levies and adjust for that? So, I know that, in Scott County, the Board of Supervisors are extremely upset by that bill and have voiced concern to the legislature. I would encourage all of you to send an email to leadership or the governor and just say that's absurd. They're gonna tie your hands again and not be able to pay for services.
Well, I would say that they just will take all taxing authority away from the supervisors and the state just manage it all because they've,
Yep.
in essence, done that.
Right,
And
right.
they'd be responsible for all the services once they just shut down county government.
Mhm. Yeah, they're taking away the local
They're
control.
taking away local control,
Well, they're doing it under the guise of fiscal responsibility, which I find particularly appalling.
which is funny.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
they're hardly a case, a good steady case for fiscal responsibility.
Right,
It's
right.
easy to save money when you're saving someone else's.
Yeah, yeah. The other bill that is out there, that passed both the House and the Senate is the Children's Mental Health Bill. And so that's, House File 690. So, that is on its way to the governor's, office as well. She put out a press release last week, very pleased with it. And the regions will be managing the children's system. And we have to have a report written and submitted to DHS by 4/20/20, so less than a year from now. So we're gonna be pulling together stakeholders, providers, and figuring out where gaps are. There is a list of core services that they want the children and their families to have. It mirrors the adult system pretty well. But this will be an interesting job, a little overwhelming right now. I continue to go through the bill, read it several times, and it's gonna have a different financial eligibility guideline than the adult system. So that'll be somewhat of a challenge, but it's gonna be very different. Now, the sad part about this is there was no money attached to that bill,
I was gonna
which,
say, what are they doing about funding, right?
yep, you already knew where that was going.
No doubt DHS is just gonna cut us a check for all the child funding.
I read the bill and I read the governor's announcement, I didn't see anything in
Oh,
there
no.
about funding, and I'm like, okay, this is great.
Right, right. We do have a legislator that has promised that there would be about 700,000 attached for the regions adding a coordinator of disability services. And we all have one or two in our offices now, but it's for the adult system. So they know and they understand that there's going to be a need from somebody in our region to help connect families and children to services. So I don't know where that money is right now. I've not seen it in the HHS appropriates bill, although they could do an amendment for that because that was on its way to the Senate. They could put it in the standings bill, but haven't seen it yet. So
And what that comes out to about $50,000 a region.
yeah, and that's not gonna do a whole lot. So we'll have some challenges there as well. So we'll have to monitor the Medicaid piece of it, and then, you know, we'll be paying for kids who are not insured, which will be minimal. Right now in our crisis system, we're serving about 25% our kids in our crisis system. So we're serving some, but there's a lot more services listed that we don't have any affiliation with, so we're gonna have to work on that and build some relationships with all 5 counties, all the providers, school districts, and so forth. So it'll be a challenge. You'll be hearing more about that as we work through that bill. We did sign year 4 contract with Robert Young Center, and we are moving forward. We'll continue with all of the services we have now. And that includes the civil commitment pre-screening, the care coordinators in EDs and in the communities, the co-occurring assessment person, and we do have a person that's starting has already started for Cedar and Muscatine County, April 1. So she's doing some training right now. So she'll be getting more and more involved with Robert Young and the hospitals and the courts and helping families get hooked up for services if they have a co-occurring issue. We will be expanding mobile crisis, and that'll happen June 1 region-wide. So we'll be working with law enforcement agencies down here as well to know that they have a resource to help them instead of them going out and dealing with somebody who's in crisis. You know, maybe they've had a fight with boyfriend or girlfriend, or maybe they're going through a tough divorce and they're, you know, talking, you know, suicide, or they're just not liking life. That's really not a good use of our law enforcement agencies, but it would be better for our mobile crisis team to go out and help them work through that. We've also been doing training with first aid, mental health first aid, and CIT training. We had a CIT week-long training in Clinton County, and there was 13 officers and 11 other agency-wide individuals that attended, and it was very good. I'm encouraging Robert Young to set up another one of those trainings, maybe in this area here, and seeing how many more we can draw. It's very time-consuming for our law enforcement officers, but it is a really good training, and it will help them on the streets. We continue to work with MSCA, Muscatine Social Services, for the Peer Drop-In Center, and they're working toward that. We hope we have a meeting coming up soon to talk about what do they need, what do they envision, how is this gonna look. We have a peer drop-in center that's doing a soft opening in Scott County last week. They're gonna do their grand opening on May 15th, and then we have one in Clinton County already with Todd Nowak in DeWitt. Crisis stabilization residential beds will be opening in May in Scott County, and those beds are available to all 5 counties and any resident. We will be working out some transportation issues, because if there is somebody down here that really needs to get out of their current environment and needs to go somewhere safe, not appropriate at the hospital, they haven't committed a crime, they don't need to be in jail, but they need a safe place to stay, they would be able to use those crisis beds. And then we are looking at doing law enforcement peer ride-alongs, some part-time hours in 3 counties, Clinton, Scott, and Muscatine. And again, we have found that when peers are talking to someone who's in crisis, they can relate much faster, much better than a law enforcement officer or a therapist or somebody on the mobile crisis team. So we're going to be looking and exploring that and talking with law enforcement to find out what days would be best to help out the law enforcement agencies in all 3 of those counties. So, any questions? Thrown a lot of information at you.
Lord, thank you so much for coming down. We
Sure.
appreciate it.
Yep, thank you.
And again, I want to thank you for working on our behalf in Des Moines.
Yeah.
I know you're a key part of some of this legislation getting crafted a little more sensibly. Thank you for that.
I just wish they would listen to our suggestions, but sometimes they get on a road.
It just takes
and-
time.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
just takes time
it
for
does.
a lot of people to convince.
It does, yeah. I don't ever give up, so, and they know that, so, thank you.
Next is item number 6, discussion and possible action to approve the minutes of the April 15th, 2019 regular meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved by Jeff, seconded by Scott. All those in favor?
Aye.
7, correspondence. Santos?
I didn't have any correspondence.
Jeff?
No, nothing to know.
I did not have correspondence.
I have nothing to know.
Doug? Committees, Doug?
Committee meetings at Muscom on the 16th, 5:30 here. Wednesday, the 17th was Local Development Corporation. And Thursday was Fair Board meeting, at 8 o'clock. Also, I brought a few things with me today. Just want everybody to be aware. This is the schedule for the Muscatine County Fair Board. And plus, all the activities are done on, and actually, we have some pretty good entertainment coming this year. They're gonna have a figure eight race, they got Roger Atkins coming to do a concert there. They're gonna cover 4x8 signs with this, and place them throughout the county in different locations, high traffic locations. We'd like to start a month ahead or a little further up the fair, do some advertising. I got a little bit of information on Roger Atkins here, and he also just released a new hit, which kind of helps things. 4 races at the West Liberty Fairgrounds this year. Saturday, May 4th is the Lucas Oil MLRA, which is a huge race. It's the late models. And that will be May 4th. May 18th is the Modified Madness. August 10th is Midsummer Madness. And August 24th is the IMCA Erie Brothers Summer Series.
24th?
Another large race. August 24th. The dates are the 4th, the 18th, the 10th, and 24th of August. And I've got a poster here. Also, they had a fundraiser this Saturday where they supplied the drinks and refreshments for the softball tournament that took place in West Liberty. Haven't heard how much money they made this weekend for that, but they're doing more and more activities at the fairgrounds to bring it in.
Scott?
Okay, on Monday the 15th, I had Conservation Board, and there was a lot of discussion there, a lot of things going on, but one of the things that's going to create a burden here in the spring and early summer is going to be under construction. High river levels, of course, you have that seep water going in, so you end up with too much groundwater there, and it's too high to start construction on the cabin water lines and septic systems. They do have Power and Water do have the electric plans together for running the power to them. The playground for up here at Discovery actually ships today. That equipment ships today. And they're looking at construction on that May 2nd through the 5th. And they are in the process of recruiting volunteers to help in the construction of that. And so if anyone is so inclined and would like to participate in that, they can certainly contact the call out Conservation Board, and any and all skilled help would be appreciated. Also, ladder well pump, they've got the bid for the drilling the wells for those cabins and that down there, but everything's gonna be set back just a little bit because of the river levels and so on. So that's just where that's at. On Wednesday the 17th, I had Riverbend Transit, and they've got confirmation at the end of the week that IDOT actually awarded the contract for 10 buses to Riverbend Transit, which that doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna get them, because you gotta see how your fleet falls into place with the rest of the state. Your stuff has to be old enough and has to have enough miles on it. But in this case, all 10 are going to be able to be used at Riverbend Transit, so that's good news. That's good news. And then, of course, they'll take 10 buses and they'll put them out for public bids and that to liquidate that once everything's in order. So that's all I have.
Great. I did not have any. Jeff?
I just wanted to touch, I had Muscatine on the 16th as well, but I just wanted to touch base and probably put on for the next week's agenda that, so the Muscatine Commission met, and we had a discussion, 2 things we said. One, we're moving forward with putting out postings for to replace the manager position. But the second thing the commission did was they voted to ask the board of supervisors and the Muscatine City Council to appoint members to relook at the organization of the Muscom with the user group and the commission. And look at that 28E for renegotiation to talk about that organization, make sure it makes sense. I think there's a pretty good swell of people that think that maybe those could be consolidated into one organization. So that would be, I guess, the ask out of this group is we appoint one, possibly two members to that, probably two, to a negotiating committee at the city. And I think we'll have to, I'll reach out to the city and ask if they do the same.
Santos?
I had a We Lead meeting on Tuesday the 16th. We had the first part was completing the first phase of that rebuilding of the building. I don't know if you've driven down there in West Liberty, but they got that pretty much first phase complete structurally. The PE came back and said that the roof looks good, the structures, the concrete breaks are coming back at 5,700 PSI, I mean, really good strength as far as the foundation goes. So we met and approved that next phase of breaking up the front facade. And then we had another informal meeting of the group going back to the City Council of West Liberty to request to see if the funding from the City Council could actually help pay for the executive director of the economic development group there as far as a portion of their pay goes, versus trying to go out and get funding from the local businesses. I think that went well. We basically left that with the presentation of you know how important it is to have a economic development group and the potential of the planting the seed for those businesses to show the potential fruits in the future, and not let the economic development group go to West Wilton or as far as other communities. We want to have that thriving West Liberty as well as other communities go. So I think that went well, and that was all I had in that portion of it.
Okay, thank you. Next up, information from county employees. Good morning, Keith.
Morning. I'll be brief. I just wanted to give you a little update on the roads. Conditions have improved. We were able, the motor graders were out touching up places pretty much all week last week. We were able to start spotting some rock. We're not ready for a wholesale hauling, but like 155th, which we had closed, is now back open. Some of the worst spots, like I said, we're able to get some rock in now. So
What does Iron City look like?
can't tell you.
Yeah, still closed all the way through there.
No, I don't think so.
It's not closed at all?
No,
Oh, okay.
no. I don't think so.
Something that I was driving back there, let's say Saturday, and something was closed. I was coming down from
You may have seen
south on 6.
on 170th, perhaps, the north end by the conservation
yeah,
swamp.
If you go east there,
Yeah.
it's closed, but it also looked like it was closed continuing south. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't
Nope. Okay.
think so. But that,
I saw a
that's
sign
closed,
that
that
it
other
was
one's
hard.
closed it through traffic just to keep from tearing that up. I mean, that goes back past Jesse Shields and up Kelly, and people going through there tear that up when it's wet. But
Great.
anyway, things are looking better. I say that cautiously because you can see frost boils coming out in July as the deep stuff comes out. I don't think we're gonna see that, but I think we've turned a corner, and hopefully in another couple of weeks we'll be able to go out a little harder than we are right now even. Okay, thanks.
Any questions, Keith?
Questions on anything?
Thanks, sir. No, nothing from Brian? We're still treading water. Good deal. Items for the administration office.
I don't have anything.
Anybody else have anything? We're adjourned. Thank you all.